Things never to do in prison. Let's speak on it. 5 things that you should never do when you get inside the walls of a prison. These are my 5. You can add any ones that you like in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Let's get into it. So, the number one thing out of the 5 that I think you should never do when you're in prison is number one, you never snitch. You know, whenever they say snitches get stitches, well, in prison, snitches could get a shank in them, a blade in them. You could die real quick. These 5 survival rules will, will help you not get chewed up whenever you're in prison. But when you go back and you think about one of the most important ones in my book is never snitch. Because once you cross the line and you tell and you get labeled a rat, you'll never live in any institution. You'll never be able to live outside of protective custody for the rest of your time, even if you can survive the rest of your time, because that's a serious violation. And in a lot of prisons, that's a stab on sight, SOS. So if you're going to survive, you keep your nose to the grindstone, keep your head down, pay attention to things, but don't tell them nothing. I've seen many guys see things go down, and they get questioned. The only thing they say is, I was asleep, didn't see it, don't know what you're talking about. You can have them on video, being right in front of whatever went down. The code is always don't tell. You got to live by that, or you'll die by it if you cross that line. Number 2 in my book is don't gamble and don't owe anybody any money. That is one of the other biggest things in prison, guys. Go into prison, they borrow stuff, they let people con them into give them stuff on credit, and then they can't pay. That's the same consequences going to come out of that is snitching. If you don't pay, that's an utter form of disrespect. And if you don't pay, somebody's going to hurt you. Somebody's going to stab you, and somebody is going to get their whatever out of you. If you don't pay them back, you're going to get beat down or stabbed, or even worse. I've seen guys get their jaws broke, get people, seen them get stabbed. It's a very serious consequence to owing and not being able to pay. So if a guy, you get something off a guy and it's time to pay up, you don't pay up, and if you just flat out disrespect them and say, "Hey, I ain't paying you," well, you can do that, but I don't think you're going to live in that penitentiary or that jail very long, because somebody's going to hurt you. Uh, it's just like out in the street. If you loan somebody $20 and they don't pay you, get pissed off. Well, in prison, it goes to a different level. People are actually going to put their hands on you. People are actually going to hurt you for being that stupid and that disrespectful to not pay your debts. The best thing I can advise is pay up, don't borrow, do without, because that's the best formula to stay ahead and stay out of trouble. Is just don't get into the practice of doing that, because in the long run you're the one that's going to pay, and you're going to pay double when you pay back anyway. So time and a half or double time is what you're paying. So remember that. Number 3 is never disrespect a man's space. What do we mean? Well, if somebody is uh, concentrating on the phone and they're talking to a loved one, or if they're watching TV, you don't step in front of them. If they're on the phone, you don't be loud around them. You don't try to hold a conversation with. Don't get in people's space, because personal space is a premium, and you really rarely get it, if any, unless you're in solitary or unless you're in lockup. So personal space, getting in another man's space, that can get you hurt all as well. People on the outside who are civilians, so to speak, don't understand the value and the just sheer um, value of personal space. In prison, it's amped up 1,000 times because a lot of things in prison are amplified just because of the tension and the nature of being locked in confined spaces. So never ever disrespects anybody's personal space. I've seen the guys get life flighted to medical outside hospitals for violating people's space at the TV and taking the remote, changing the channel, and stuff like that. That kind of stuff is minimal to people on the outside, but on the inside, that's a red line you don't cross ever because that's just something you don't do. It's an unwritten rule, but anybody's done any time knows exactly what I'm talking about. Don't do that. Number four is you never show weakness because predators in prison look for the weak. And if you show any type of weakness, I'm not saying you have to go in like Richard Pryor in his movies and talking shit about who all you're going to ask you're going to kick, all that kind of stuff. But you don't ever show weakness. Now, in prison, you basically have to just try to stay to yourself, keep your mouth shut, stay quiet if you can. But if people in jails and prison are always going to test you because they want to see if they can get over on you. They want to see if they can turn you into a punk, see if they can turn you into a victim. And if you show any signs of weakness, you're going to get violated. I mean, I've seen a smaller statured guy who was picked on constantly by a bigger guy, and they were different races, so that played into it. The smaller guy was a white guy, the bigger guy was a black guy, but he kept picking on him and bullying him. And one day, he heated up, some baby oil, some hair grease, and all that stuff for 10, 15 minutes, and ended up throwing it in the guy's face to get him off of him, get him to teach him a lesson that he wasn't a punk and he wasn't going to be punked out because he was in for murder anyway. But he was very small, so he had to have an equalizer. So in that whole dynamic, you had a big, huge guy and a small guy, and the bigger guy thought just by his size and his able to intimidate people with his size that worked. But in this case, the guy equalized that with some prison lava and burnt the guy pretty severely, messed him up. And number five is the one that, you know, you try to, most prisons, you never get close to staff people because if you do, they think you're a rat. And the unwritten rule is you just kind of keep that line where you don't get too close to a staff person to where it makes the other inmates think you're a rat, a snitch, or a plant. It's kind of like if you ever watched the show 60 Days In. Well, that show kind of proves the point because you never know about anything in prison. You're basically you're taught to never trust anybody, and that's kind of the rule. So you don't trust anybody anyway. So the last thing you want to do is get into those type of relationships with guys, especially staff people, officers, or even non-uniform staff like counselors and stuff like that, because it doesn't matter what the conversation is. It could be strictly business conversation about classes or trying to get out, anything, but interpreted by the inmate side, they think you're a rat. So it doesn't really matter what the perception is. Perception and reality is two different things. And in prison, a lot of things get distorted pretty quickly. So the best advice is never get close to staff because it always draws suspicion and danger. These are the 5 things never to do in prison. Like I said, drop a comment down below and give me your things to add to the list, and we'll come back and we'll do a second video on the same topic. Remember, like, share, and subscribe, and always stay on the other side.